Everybody, guess what? You know what this sound is? It's the freaking fire alarm for my apartment. And it's been going off 3 days in a row. I can't take this anymore. Either somebody's smoking pot in the building, or the kitchen next door doesn't know how to f***ing cook. I'm gonna come back when there's no more alarm, and then talk more about why I'm pissed the f*** off at this, if it's not already abundantly clear. Hey, would you look at that? It's 11:30 and the fire alarm is going off again. 2 times in one day. This is the same thing that happened yesterday. It has gone off 5 times in the span of 3 days. How do they not see the problem with this? You have hundreds, if not 1,000 people living in this building. And if any one of the businesses that are attached to it has any sort of mishap, then everybody's got to deal with this freaking obnoxious nuisance. This is ridiculous. Oh, geez, what a day. I'll tell you what, those fire alarms in the morning had really set me off. But thankfully, we had quite a turnaround. When I got back home, because I came home this weekend for a doctor's appointment I've got tomorrow, I hopped on voice chat with my darling Felix, and Trico was there as well. And then we took some time to look around, find some old TV shows we used to watch. And Felix, the Chad, came on here with a whole bunch of wonderful shows. There's one game show called The Crystal Maze, where essentially you're doing a whole bunch of escape room-esque games of different categories. And if a member of your team does the game correctly, then you win a crystal. And based on how many crystals you have at the end, that gives you more time in this sort of like ticket blaster sort of machine. And you got to try and grab as many of these gold or silver pieces. Well, you want to grab the gold papers. If you grab the silver ones, they count as minus. And this whole time, they have some of the most inventive mini games I've ever seen. I think my favorite one, they literally had like those bowling ramps, at a bowling alley, but they were shaped in a loop where you had to hit into this weird piston-shaped thing that made it spin around and raise up the lever that held the crystal. The funniest thing, too, I think about this game is that you had to make it out in time, and if you didn't, you got stuck in there and were just left in there until your teammates could spend a crystal to buy you out. It was crazy. The whole thing was just such chaos, and I loved every minute of it. And then we watched this other one. I forget the name of it already, but I had written it down. Takeshi's Castle, that's it. Where it's essentially, it was a show that was on in Japan, and then this British show apparently got the rights to it, basically just broadcasted what the show was, and had these goofy dubs over the whole thing as people were getting like completely demolished by like rubber balls and getting flung into the mud. It was Wipeout, but so much better. Oh my God. I think my favorite part of the whole thing, they had this segment where it was the kids and then their parents. The kids were helping out their parents in different things. And so one of the mini games they had, the parents would run up and push the kid on this sort of pallet that had wheels on it, and it was on a track, and it was shaped to look like an airplane flying through the sky. And you had to try and get them as close to the edge, like shuffleboard, without sending them over the edge. And I was just watching this. Okay, what do they do if they don't go far enough? And that's what happens to the first person. And then just a dude in a penguin suit goes coming out from the water, and he just pushes them over. It was so beautiful. It was just a hoot the whole time. And I'll tell you what, I was prepared to have a real sour day from all those fire alarms going off, because I'm really just not here for it. I swear, I thought the fire alarms in the morning were going to ruin my whole day, because they have gone off 3 days in a row, 5 times over the course of 3 days, and I think that's just unacceptable. But we'll talk a little bit more about that later. The point is, these 2 shows that Felix introduced to me are wonderful, and I highly suggest checking them out. But yeah, to quote Felix, I don't think I've laughed harder than I have tonight at all of these wonderful shows. Like, my head literally hurts now from how much I was just giggling and laughing like a hyena at all this crazy shenanigans going on. And for the Crystal Maze one, too, I was legitimately rooting for the people. At least the first team we watched, there was some phenomenal stuff. Oh,
Another one of the ones I really had liked, they had this giant cylinder that was a maze itself that you had to step on in order to control the crystal and move it through the maze. And the guy had like 3 seconds left, but he was controlling it like a champ and did eventually get the crystal out. Also, the funny thing, with the minus bills, like, you cannot tell the difference between silver and gold when they're flying around you at like 50 miles an hour because they turn on these fans and send all these paper bills flying around, and it's all super bright lights and stuff. So they got a good deal of gold bills, but they got more silver ones. They ended up with like negative 90 points. Also, the guy that hosts the show was really getting on my nerves after a while, just playing the friggin' harmonica while they're trying to tell the other person what to do. And we did watch another episode of that in a later season, but that one wasn't as good because the puzzles were more convoluted and he was like giving them a lot of hints, which to me tells that the instructions for the puzzle weren't really clear in the first place. But the first episode we watched was really good. I also had a pretty great lunch too. I went with my mom because she was taking me back from college. We went to Red Robin, which is a place I haven't been to in a decent while because I've been trying to diet a little more. But I decided to throw it out the window because A, I wanted to eat a lot before I went to the doctor's tomorrow. And B, I was having a rough morning, so I wanted to sort of make up for it. I got myself a pretty tasty burger and some Island Heat wings. And I had to make sure I ate a lot during that meal because I wasn't going to eat dinner tonight. And that's because tomorrow I'm getting an ultrasound on my gallbladder to make sure there's nothing wrong with that. I had went to the doctor a couple days ago, or I think like a week or two ago at this point, just as a means of trying to figure out why I was feeling random pains in my abdomen or suddenly getting nauseous after eating food. And ultimately, I think it boils down to anxiety. I've been talking with my therapist about that to see the patterns that arise. And it does seem to be mostly fueled by me just thinking about my body and getting concerned about that sort of stuff. And that one instance where I did actually get food poisoning back in November must have triggered my hyper fixation on the things that I'm eating. It is good to an extent that I was doing this because it got me eating healthier for a good while. Because I was just straight up eating chicken that I fried up in the pan with some mixed greens for almost every meal. And I lost a good deal of weight. Like, I was above 210, 212 pounds, and I'd been trying to work my way down. And I almost got to below 200. But now I've just been hovering around 204, 203, something like that. But to me, that just signifies if you focus on it enough, the things that you're putting in your mouth and then how much exercise you're doing, then you really can take off the pounds. If you're coming from like a really high place, then it might be a little more difficult. But at least for my own experience, I was able to make some pretty significant progress. I just need to work a little bit more on the exercise bit and staying consistent with what I'm eating. But the one thing that has really helped me in cutting all this out is sugar. I have hardly eaten any ice cream, cookies, or sodas or anything like that ever since I started trying to eat healthier for the first time. And I think that's what's making most of the difference, because that's something you could very clearly and quickly cut out. That's just an addendum to the end of a meal. You don't have to have that. Even if the meal itself is a little less healthy, like if you're eating a burger or something and it's kind of greasy, at least you're getting a lot of protein, you're getting veggies. It's not the best thing for you, but it's certainly better than just pure sugar. But given how my day had such a turbulent start and suddenly turned pretty well towards the end of it, I think that's a good example of not letting one bad thing ruin your day. You know, give yourself the opportunity to bounce back. And in a way, you kind of need those bad days because they make the good times feel better. Not only are you just having a good time, but you're lifting yourself up from that bad time you had earlier. That's not to say you should seek out bad times, but at the very least, when you are feeling bad, don't make it into such a drastic situation where you refuse the opportunity to get better. I know this was more of an issue I had when I was younger, like in my teen years. But if anybody else is in this sort of pickle, you can use this as a reminder that it can get better. If you're feeling crappy in the moment, it can get better. You just need to put yourself out there and let yourself be open to things that will make you feel better. Despite all this, however, I would still say that the frequency in which the fire alarms are going off in my building is concerning. They say they can't do anything about it because that's just city regulations. But riddle me this. If We're attached to like 6 different restaurants. We're all part of the same building. They're just like at the lowest portion of it. If all of those restaurants are liable of catching fire or having smoke cause the fire department to come down, then why does it need to affect the hundreds of other people that are living in the apartment that are on the upper floors? When it does go off, they don't make you evacuate. They just say, please wait until further notice and don't go down the exit stairs, because they don't know if it's going to be a real emergency yet. So how about instead of having the alarm go off for such a long time, because it takes like 15, 20 minutes for them to actually shut it off sometimes, they should just wait until it spreads over to another portion, or if it's a certain amount of alarms away in order to warrant it. If one smoke detector in one restaurant that is so far away from all the other apartments goes off, but none of the other adjacent smoke detectors go off because they don't detect any smoke, then it shouldn't alarm everybody that's in the building that is still pretty far away, because that is an indicator that there's nothing actually wrong. It just meant that there were some smoke plumes while they were cooking. Because the restaurant that was having the fire issues was so far away from me, being on the 22nd floor. Even if it did fully catch fire, I would be able to make it down the stairwell and out without any problem whatsoever. And my roommate had said too, there's not really much of a way to spread because these buildings are all made out of concrete and there's nothing the fire could really catch on to burn. It just needs to have a smarter way of detecting what the issue is. And I feel like too, maybe this could be beneficial with some cameras. If the buildings could communicate with each other to figure out what's going on and then shut off the alarms sooner. If it went off, like, for a minute or so, that wouldn't be so bad. And hopefully not while I'm in the middle of sleeping, because that's the biggest kicker. But they should be able to detect and determine whether or not it's a problem a lot faster than they do. I really care about my hearing, though. I don't like loud noises, and it goes on for far too long. And it's actually making me think that I should move somewhere else for my next term. I'm still trying to think about where that would be, because I also don't want to spend too much on rent. But I don't know. It's just asinine. That's the only way I could describe it. And they say they hate it too, of course, but there's got to be something we could do about it. I guess it's the current structure and foundation of the buildings that is making it go off, because all these buildings are connected together and the alarms have to go off. But in that case, they should be able to go for some sort of regulation that says, okay, we can have a different alarm cascade if the fire is isolated to those other buildings, or if it even is a fire. Because at this point, even just a tinge of smoke will set the entire building up in an alarm. And they're kitchens. Of course there's going to be smoke when you're cooking with fire, but none of these buildings actually caught fire or even had any damage from what we could see. It's all just little bouts of smoke. And I wouldn't be surprised if a handful of those times were from neighbors smoking pot, because we can still smell it sometimes. But at the very least, my day looked up when I came onto voice chat and I hung out with my friend and my boyfriend. That was a good way for me to conclude my day, and I'm happy that I got to do that. Oh gosh, it must have really taken a lot out of me, because we were watching these shows since like 4 p.m. today, and it's like 8 now, and I've been laughing nonstop. Not really nonstop, but like, I don't know. When I laugh, I laugh like a hyena. So... And it certainly doesn't help that I didn't get such great sleep tonight. I was so upset about the fire alarm issues from the previous day, too, and then a separate thing about job offers, that I just stayed up till like 1:30 in the morning, and I had to get up at like 9, not just because of the alarm, but because I had to get up at that time anyways. But still, it's just such an unpleasant thing to wake up to. All right, well, that's just about all that happened today, at least that I care to talk about. So I think I'm going to log off. And I'm going to go drink some water, catch some Z's, and then go to my appointment tomorrow. All right? See y'all soon.